Hello, I am the Script Doctor and welcome to the channel. The last two episodes of Star Trek Picard have not only reinforced the meaninglessness of this show, they've solidified it beyond any doubt. Even trying to break these final two episodes down for a cogent review is something quite difficult to do, because the content itself is so nonsensical and at the same time so unimaginative, it has compelled me to come up with a new term to explain this approach to writing. Shaban. To possess an extreme amount of derivative ignorance, to be willfully uninformed and refuse to exercise imagination when tasked with creating a story, to execute poorly based on aforementioned defined traits. But Shaban is not alone in this mess, so you're probably wondering about Akiva Goldsman. That's an easy one. Akiva, to win a single award for an adaptation of someone else's work and exploit it for decades in an attempt to maintain a subpar career. Similar to another term now known as Dan and Dave, to be able to adapt but unable to create. Perhaps you're wondering why I don't use any of these definitions to describe Alex Kurtzman. Well, we could, but Kurtzman is slightly different. Kurtzman or Klutzman, to master the formula of failure, to misunderstand the difference between theft and homage, to never achieve individual success and have no sense of creativity or conviction, to parasite off others more skillful and talented and repurpose existing ideas. If you wonder why he still keeps getting work, I suspect it has more to do with Hollywood thinking that statistically he should have a hit film or show soon given all of his past failures. But there's a very big difference between a string of bad luck and a pattern of behavior. With these writers at the helm of Star Trek Picard, many people were very correct in suspecting this show would be a travesty. After all, the axiom, "you're only as good as your last story," is an axiom for a reason. And what is the story of Star Trek Picard? Well, the overall plot of the show is this. The synths are banned by the Federation as a result of a terrorist attack. A synth is found to exist by Picard, and he needs to return her to her home. The Romulans, who are secretly the reason for the synth terrorist attack, must destroy this newly revealed synth because they discovered an ancient message warning that the development of artificial intelligence will bring massive destruction of organic life to the galaxy. It is up to Picard to expose the Romulan subterfuge and in doing so protect the synths and all life in the galaxy by convincing the synths to not bring about galactic-wide destruction. After cutting out all the clutter of this series, this plot description appears to be simpler than what we've seen, but it is still messy and convoluted. Even the IMDb description of the show doesn't address what Picard is about, and its tagline is as derivative as a first-year screenwriting student ending their screenplay with the words "the beginning" instead of "the end." But the sad truth of the matter is that, after figuring out this plot, an astute viewer will see that 10 episodes was 8 episodes too many to tell this story. I've said it before, I'll say it again and forever. When writing a story, keep it simple, stupid. It's not about how many subplots or storylines you as the writer can juggle in a single screenplay. It's about the method with which you present those subplots and how many the average person can retain. It's not about dumbing down your work to appeal to the masses. It's about picking something specific and focusing on that to create a connection. It's great if you have several story ideas, but you don't need to tell them all at the same time. Focus on one, and if it hits well and people ask, "Hey, what do you have next?" draw from the pile you set aside and tell another focused story. It is actually quite difficult to succinctly define all the other plot threads introduced in this series. So much so that this show actually becomes meta in 2 instances. The first I referenced in my Episode 8 review, showing what it must be like in the Star Trek Picard writer's room. And next, in this episode, with Jurati channeling what the audience is going through as they watch the show.
Please be over, be over, be over, be over, be over.
What ends up happening in Episode 9 is our crew gets attacked by giant space flowers. The incident knocks out Picard and resets him to original factory settings, where he delivers a speech with the strength and confidence of the Jean-Luc Picard we've seen before. But just like with a phone or computer, there are some things so damaged that a restart is more of a band-aid solution than a permanent fix. And that's what Episodes 9 and 10 are. A series of bandages wrapped around countless lacerations and broken bones, desperately trying to hold the patient that is Star Trek Picard together just long enough to make it to the end. That's the only reason why we see the Borg cube follow Picard through the transwarp conduit. After surviving the crash landing and learning that the ship is without power, our crew has two choices: go to Soji's home and warn the synths that the Romulans are coming to attack, or check in on the Borg cube. Obviously, with time being of the essence, it is imperative that they avoid the goal of the show and see if there are any ex-Borg survivors. Not to help them with their mission or assist in restoring the Borg cube, nope, just to wrap up the loose end that is Elnor and 7 of 9 by way of using their long-range sensors to insert stakes in a ticking clock. All of which could be done if they just didn't make the La Sirena ship lose power. If they wanted to ground the ship, they could have had the engines overheat and need to be cooled and repaired. Why does the ship need to be grounded in the first place? We learn that the Romulans have over 200 ships on their way. The odds are already stacked against them. It is important to not make things easy for your main characters, but you also need to be economical with your storytelling. If the goal is to ground the ship and also establish the stakes, combine those aspects together. Don't add another ship for the heroes to travel to in order to get information that could believably be written into the previous scene. That's just a waste of time for the sake of exposition. And since they're not giving us anything new development-wise with Elnor or 7 of 9 in this sequence, it becomes completely useless. Why can't Soji's home have long-range sensors? It's a society full of advanced synthetics. The technology shouldn't be out of their reach. If they can make giant space flowers to protect themselves from inbound ships, that shows they have a means of detection and should be able to discover the information needed to establish the stakes of this two-part episode. Instead, what we get is a synthetic hippie compound led by a never-before-mentioned secret son of Soong named Alton Inigo. Ugh. His first two initials are AI. Jeesh. I bet the writers celebrated all night after coming up with that name. Alton's introduction is to supplement the Bruce Maddox role, so the writers don't have to pay another character fee to Melinda Snodgrass. He doesn't do or contribute much to the episode. He's merely there to facilitate the introduction of Sutra, an earlier model of Soji with bronze skin and yellow eyes. She is the de facto leader of the synths and, after learning of recent events, suggests that the Romulans are being driven mad because the admonition they experienced wasn't meant for organic minds. She suspects there is a real message buried beneath that only a synthetic mind can understand. With permission, she asks to mind meld with Jurati to see the admonition for herself. How an android is supposed to perform a Vulcan mind meld escapes me. Perhaps the writers think telepathy and Wi-Fi are fundamentally the same. Through this mind meld, we learn that the Romulans are right. Synthetics present a real danger. The admonition was left by an advanced synthetic race that instructs them to build a beacon that will open a portal and bring about the destruction of all organic life in the galaxy. So this is the twist? All this time we've been rooting for Picard? Well, the writers think we've been rooting for Picard, when we should have been rooting for the Romulans? This type of revelation is kind of Star Trek-ish. It's presented as not a black and white idea. It poses some questions that a character like Picard would bring up when he faces the Romulan leader. Questions like, why did the Romulans not share such information with the rest of the galaxy given the stakes involved? What gives the Romulans the right to judge and execute people who developed advanced synthetic life? Why sacrifice Romulan citizens by reprogramming the synthetics and preventing the Federation from assisting in evacuation and rescue? You know, Star Trek questions. But those types of questions are far too heady for the likes of Kurtzman, Chabon, and Goldsman, so that's all ignored. What we get instead is a scene where Raffi is given a device from a synth to fix their ship before leaving Picard and Jurati behind. She thanks Picard for everything he's done for her, and then the two exchange I love yous.
I'm serious! What kind of torture is this?
Yep, just another example of character inconsistency. The writers must have forgotten, but Picard has not done anything to help Raffi this entire series. Unless she's thanking him for that bottle of wine he brought her in episode 3. So far, Raffi has gotten Picard a ship, traded her last friend in Starfleet for a set of diplomatic credentials, and somehow uncovered the secrets of the Zhat Vash. What has Picard done for Raffi? He gave her a round of applause. I guess Raffi felt that's all she ever needed from Picard. Back on the compound, we learn that Sutra is convinced by the admonition and becomes our new antagonist. She decides it is best to build the beacon and call on the Synthetic Alliance to enter our galaxy and liberate them from organic oppression. She almost has a proper debate with Soji, who doesn't want any more death, but their scene is interrupted when Marik is captured. Sutra uses Marik to kill one of their own to convince the community that they will never be safe so long as organics live. It's a very perplexing story beat. Aside from being disintegrated like Daj, how can synths die? Alton finds Saga stabbed in the eye and grieves, but can he not repair her? He was the one that built her. Even if that object damaged her brain, he should have enough skill to fix her up. Otherwise, how are these synths really any more advanced than organics if they can be destroyed just as easily? While Picard does make an attempt to argue against such a course of action, it's all for nothing because Picard is not a figure to be listened to anymore. Even his calls to Starfleet requesting help on this planet get ignored. Picard's speech is rejected, and this episode concludes with him confined to quarters and Jurati assisting Altan with his golem. Ah yes, the golem, a new synthetic life form designed to be the recipient of an organic mind. Altan soon is building this for himself. What is the reason he's doing this? We don't know for sure. We can assume he's getting older and wants more time to live, or he's hoping that by transferring himself into this body he'll be spared from the forthcoming synthetic doom. But it's really just there to set up a bittersweet ending to Episode 10. And boy is Episode 10 bitter and not really sweet. Raffi and Rios use the device given to them by the synths to repair the ship. Apparently it's a Deus Ex Machina machine and is able to fix all the problems in the ship in a matter of seconds. Once that's complete, Narek shows up and the three decide to work together in order to save the universe. Narek went back to the Borg cube to talk to his sister and get grenades. In the final episode, we learn that Narek is a Zhat Vash washout and black sheep of the family, so everything he has done so far is to prove his worthiness to the cause. Would have been nice if we got that information earlier, but then again, Episode 10 ends up being a collection of afterthoughts. One of which is Elnor, sneaking on the ship and holding his sword to Narek's throat. What follows are 2 additional scenes that should have been done in one. We get a scene of them outside sitting at a campfire. Narek tells the others of the Romulan legend of the Destroyer, followed by a poor attempt at cross-editing an Ocean's 11-style plan to destroy the beacon by housing a bomb inside a soccer ball. What bothers me is how none of them thought to fly the now-repaired ship over to the synth compound and destroy the beacon with its phasers. Sure, they could argue that they're at risk of being thwarted by those space flowers, but these synths have to register the ship first before they can launch the flowers. That gives them a short window of time to strike. It also opens up an opportunity to build tension. Say they see the La Sirena on approach, detect it is arming its phasers, and launch the flowers. Rios now has to fly his way around them as they attack, and get a clear lock on the tower to destroy it without hurting the synths at the compound. If they're going to be inspired by a video game to tell this story, they can at least give us a more thrilling set piece that we can enjoy. Also, there is no reason for them to succeed in the attempt. It could still have the same outcome that the show provides, with them failing to destroy the beacon. That's right. Their plan doesn't work. They don't destroy the beacon, and it activates when it really shouldn't. Because while all this planning and holographic building of the tower is happening, Altan Soong is downloading the last thoughts from the dead android Saga who was killed by Narek in the previous episode. Before he can discover what really took place, Jurati convinces him to leave the lab and unlock some encrypted files so she can complete the mind transfer process. The moment he leaves, she steals Saga's good eye and uses it to free Picard. I do have to pause for a moment because I am recounting this episode with better narrative structure and editing than the show actually depicts. You see, between the scenes of Jurati stealing the eye and freeing Picard, that's when the campfire scene happens, which takes place at night, and the other 2 scenes take place during the day, meaning that Jurati held on to this eye for several hours, and Altan Soong, who is monitoring the download of Saga's mind, doesn't notice that she's missing her other eye. But what Altan did discover is that Sutra was the one who killed Saga, blamed it on Narek, and used that to convince the others to construct the beacon. As a result, Altan deactivates Sutra but doesn't reveal her treacherous nature to the rest of the synths. Instead, he lets them carry out the construction. He can stop this right now. All he has to do is say, "Sutra lied and I have proof." But no, the writers ignore that and instead give us Picard flying Rios' ship with Jurati at ops in the hopes of stopping the Romulan fleet that has just entered the system. Soji launches the space flowers, and instead of the Romulans ignoring them like our writers ignore logic, they attack the flowers instead of attacking the damned city that's opening a portal to their destruction. Once the flowers are destroyed, we get Jurati making reference to "make it so" and Picard maneuver, as if the writers are trying to convince us that they know what Star Trek is in the most effortless way possible. Picard postulates a new plan by referencing airplanes, mirrors, and radar, because everyone in the 24th century understands those ancient terms and not something more comparable to their time frame. It's like us in the 21st century referencing horses when describing a new technique when it comes to street racing.
I need to go faster if I'm going to win this race. I can do it if I inject nitrous oxide into the engine.
Like giving your horse a dose of cocaine so it can run faster. Jurati figures out how to use the imagination tool to create hundreds of holographic copies of "Jesus Christ, that's creepy! Quick, new scene, new scene!"
Ready planetary sterilization pattern number 5.
That's not much better. Sterilization pattern number 5? It's a single location. no bigger than a parking lot. Are sterilization patterns 1 through 4 reserved for larger targets? Why do you even need a pattern number? Why not the simple order of, target that compound and open fire, don't stop until you break the planet's crust? Then we get a repeat of the previous confrontation. Picard creates hundreds of holographic ships, and again, like with the space flowers, O doesn't say, fire on the planet, she instead orders the fleet to target these new ships. Where are her priorities? It's as if someone has her child held hostage and she has a clear means of stopping it, but won't because there's a swarm of mosquitoes between her and the enemy and she must squash all of them before saving her child. What is sad is how this scene is only the second of 3 false starts for the Romulans. It's also the dumbest means of distraction we've seen thus far, because the holographic ships aren't going to deflect or obstruct Romulan disruptor fire. Those bolts are going to pass right through them, and what is it that those ships are blocking? The very planet and compound they're defending. The Romulans should be registering explosions on the planet's surface immediately and see that the ships are a ruse instantly. We should be getting reaction shots on the surface of wildlife fleeing for their lives, the Borg trying to raise their shields, and the synths in the compound taking cover. But instead, somehow, the 200-odd Romulan ships fail to hit anything, including the large planet before them. Picard's ship is struck, and the holograms vanish. Soji completes construction and activates the beacon, opening a portal above the planet. O orders to resume their sterilization pattern and to fire on her command, which should be as soon as possible. But the writers don't want the characters to drive the story. They have to wait a beat so that Starfleet can arrive to defend the planet and the synths who are intent on destroying both sides. That's right. It turns out Picard's message made it through, and Riker has returned to command the squadron. He threatens O by stating that all his ships have targeted the warp cores of each Romulan vessel.
Well, isn't that special?
Except, Romulans don't have warp cores. They use an artificial quantum singularity reactor, basically a black hole. For a show that spends every episode exposing us to Romulans, the writers don't really know the first thing about established Romulan technology or culture. Heck, as I've demonstrated in previous episodes, the writers of Star Trek Picard don't even understand character consistency or goals. O's reaction to Riker's threat is to retarget the fleet's weapons on the Federation ships instead of making a committed run to the planet and save the galaxy. She's willing to engage in a skirmish as if she has all the time in the world, but there's a freaking portal opening above the planet that will bring certain death to everyone in the galaxy. Neither side opens fire. Instead, Picard's brain abnormality flares up and he gets Jurati to give him a stimulant so he can communicate with Soji one last time. And then, true to form for Michael Chabon, we get another utterly stupid line. When Jurati is worried about the stimulant, Picard states,
"It will only hasten the inevitable."
Hasten, as in to speed up. Shouldn't he say it would only delay the inevitable, but give him the time he needs? If he's asking for his condition to be hastened, shouldn't he be dying a lot faster after he is dosed up? I know showrunners have the final say when it comes to scripts, but they do have assistants who are supposed to keep an eye open for these types of screw-ups. For some reason, neither the Romulans or Starfleet are engaging in a battle, so Picard has plenty of time to speak to Soji and explain to her why he chose to save their lives at the cost of his own, and he believes she'll do the right thing and turn off the beacon and save the lives her actions are currently putting in jeopardy. The speech does the job. Soji smashes the console to the beacon and deactivates the portal. And in the nick of time too, because derivative robotic tentacles were creeping through that opening. Some off-screen bridge officer on O's ship informs her that the beacon was destroyed and asks for her orders. Weren't her orders to fight the Starfleet ships? Shouldn't they have been doing that this entire time? O gives the orders to stand down, and Riker, pleased with the outcome, offers to escort her fleet out of Federation space instead of, I don't know, maybe arresting her for espionage? What is with these writers letting characters get away with their crimes? Is there no sense of responsibility? Is that concept foreign to writers in the year 2020? Is their moral compass as broken as the one Soji used to find her way home? Can we not see repercussions for horrible actions done to others in our content these days? It's one thing for a villain to find a cunning means of escape, but it's another when the heroes of your stories choose to let the villains get away. I'm almost expecting O to raise her fist and say something across the lines of, "Next time, Picard, next time." Now that the entire plot is complete, what next is there for Picard to do except to die? After all, it does follow the pattern. If you're an export character of a Star Trek series, you've got to go. They killed Icheb, they killed Hugh, and now they'll kill Picard. Seven will be the only export character from the previous Star Trek series left standing. Why is that? Well, because she's 7 of 9 and the leader of the Fenris Rangers. The show can't afford to lose her now, or so the writers would have you think. The only real beat that Seven got this episode is kicking Narissa off a ledge in that Borg cube during all the commotion above the planet. In fact, Narissa had somehow restored weapons on the Borg cube and was targeting Picard's ship. However, Seven chooses to disable the weapons instead of using them against the Romulans. Why not have the Borg cube try and help Picard? I can tell you why. Because the script said so. Can't let the ex-Borg also contribute to saving the galaxy and earning a better appearance to the Federation. Nope, they have to remain in the background so Picard can be the proverbial keys jingling in front of O until Starfleet shows up. Picard returns to the surface and dies among strangers, and then we get a few moments of watching those strangers grieve before we return to Picard's chateau, where Data greets him in what he describes as a massively complex quantum simulation. Fitting, because what follows is massively convoluted exposition. In a little over 5 minutes, we learn how Data was revitalized by Bruce Maddox and Alton Soon, then Picard is given closure regarding Data's death from Star Trek Nemesis, and finally that Jurati, Alton, and Soji were able to scan, map, and transfer a complete neural image of Picard's brain. In other words, they copied him. Everything we see from Picard since the start of this scene is a copy, not the original. Before he leaves the simulation, Data wants the Picard copy to terminate his consciousness. He wants to live with the same understanding of having a finite life like a human. Understanding that the interactions humans share with each other are temporary and therefore have a special meaning to those involved. It is almost profound until Data brings up butterflies and how if a butterfly lives forever, it is not a butterfly. The copy of Picard wakes up in the Golem, as many astute watchers predicted, and we're given another expositional scene where the Picard copy is told that he is not immortal and that he has an expiration date giving him the time the original Picard would have had if he did not suffer from that brain abnormality. His body is not upgraded in any way. He's not younger, he has no super strength or senses like Soji. He's just put inside a brand new 94-year-old body to live out the rest of his artificial days. From there we get Picard's eulogy of Data against a cover of the song Blue Skies. As Picard removes the 3 USB devices from the computer, Data grows older and passes away inside the simulation. From there, the Picard copy boards Rios' ship along with Jurati, Elnor, 7 of 9, who I guess is in a relationship with Raffi. I'm sure many people of that sexual preference are pleased that the writers remembered them as an afterthought, instead of setting up and showing us a developing love story that is a byproduct of Raffi's journey to sobriety. Representation for representation's sake is the laziest form of providing representation. There's a phrase I think applies to this. If you're going to do something, do it right or not at all. That phrase goes through my mind constantly while watching Star Trek Picard. In my observation, they've done nothing right by the characters and nothing right by the franchise. Even the synthetic ban that was a running issue through this series is resolved with a single line, avoiding the debate that the synthetics nearly brought about an apocalypse, avoiding or forgetting the fact that the Romulans are able to reprogram synths, which was what caused the series of events to occur in the first place, and that there is somewhere outside of our galaxy a massive synthetic force that knows we exist and will most likely be coming for us in the future. The show also fails to resolve questions regarding characters, questions they could have answered if they didn't spend a few minutes showing 7 of 9, Rios, Raffi, and Elnor crying over Picard. Questions like, what happened to Narek? What about the fate of the ex-Borg on the liberated cube? What about the beacon? The tower isn't really destroyed, it's right there in the background. All a synth has to do is fix the console and that portal is open once again. Star Trek never made the audience dread our own future, and yet, here we are, a show that was a hopeful idea for humanity deconstructed into a depressing, uninspiring shell of what it once was. In my Episode 6 review, I joked that Star Trek Picard is about a 94-year-old man who chases after a 20-year-old girl. That joke appears to have become reality, as those actions result in Picard getting a new lease on life, even if it's in an artificial body with a copied brain. To add insult to injury, the girl he's chasing after is his best friend's daughter. At the end of the day, Star Trek Picard ends up becoming a 24th century take on a midlife crisis. It is just one of many things the writers misunderstand about their own concept, such as how a society responds to an attack by domestic or foreign perpetrators, or the cause and treatment of refugees, or the recovery of victims and their reintegration. And after 10 episodes, we don't get a single character moment or story beat that would compel an audience to explore or debate any of those subjects, because not a single developed argument was provided to warrant such a result. Et in Arcadia Ego is an interesting title. When translated, it reads, even in Arcadia, there I am. It is the same title of a few paintings. The original by Giovanni Francesco Barberi, also known as Guercino, and years later 2 commissioned works reimagined by Nicolas Poussin. All 3 convey the same meaning, that art is a creative response to humanity's realization of their inevitable death. Sounds very similar to the book Rios was reading at the start of the season and what Picard and Data spoke about in their simulation. What makes us known to the world beyond our expiration date isn't just our biological offspring, but also what we can create that stands the test of time. Shakespeare has been dead for centuries, yet we know of him because of his sonnets and plays. The same with Beethoven for his music, Sigmund Freud for his analysis of the psyche, Temujin, or Genghis Khan as he's more widely known, for his conquering and widespread empire, and Socrates for his philosophical ideas. Are the producers of Star Trek Picard suggesting that this show will have a larger impact than the series that came before? They may think so. It definitely has a negative impact, that is for sure. But how could the writers think that they did their job with this story? What was Picard's arc? Him changing from a 94-year-old organic man to a 94-year-old synthetic copy is not a journey. He didn't change his idea about synthetics. They never addressed his original desire to help Romulan refugees. He doesn't do anything to help his fellow ex-Borg aside from realizing that they're victims of assimilation. It's a story built on the foundation of Star Trek The Next Generation without really adding anything to it. But whereas Et in Arcadia was an original work by Barberi, Poussin, when he was commissioned to make his own interpretation, did not do so with the intent or result of scoffing at or damaging Barberi's original piece. Poussin expanded upon the idea. He showed more of the world, presented a new angle, but did not introduce anything that would conflict with the original. The intent remained, allowing for all versions to still be enjoyed. So far, that has not been the case with Star Trek Picard. It is literally just a poor artificial copy without a soul. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. If you have anything to add to this episode, please leave a comment below. Thank you for watching, and never forget, it all starts with the script.